Life constantly brings us face with the undeniable truth that people come and go. We form connections, bond with others, and anchor our emotions to these relationships. Yet what happens when those bonds break? How do we cope when someone no longer occupies the same space in our lives, or worse, when we realize they never shared the same emotional investment? You might wonder, how can I stop caring? Is it possible to emotionally detach without losing a piece of myself? This is where Stoicism, particularly the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, offers a guiding light. The Stoics were masters at understanding human emotions, not by avoiding them, but by learning how to balance their hold on our lives. Emotional detachment, according to Stoicism, is not about becoming cold or indifferent, but about regaining the ability to act with clarity and inner peace. In this article, I'll explore 5 timeless Stoic rules for emotionally detaching from someone, using Marcus Aurelius's wisdom as our guide. These aren't just theoretical ideas, but practical tools that can reshape how you engage with both yourself and others. Rule 1. Understand the impermanence of life. Marcus Aurelius reminds us everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. When it comes to emotional attachments, we often cling to our personal narratives, stories about someone's importance in our lives. But the reality is, all relationships are transient. One moment you're close to someone, and the next they're gone. Whether through distance, death, or the gradual fading of intimacy, people leave, and this isn't something we can avoid. It may seem grim, but this is the first rule of Stoic detachment: embrace impermanence. The more we try to possess someone or something, the faster it slips away. This natural law of life is illustrated by the metaphor of holding a hand full of sand at the beach. The tighter you squeeze, the quicker it slips through your fingers. In my own life, I had a friendship that lasted over 10 years. We shared dreams, fears, and countless late-night conversations. But over time, things changed. The connection began to fade, and despite my resistance, the emotional investment I had made felt like a chain. It wasn't until I accepted that the friendship had run its course that I was able to release the emotional weight. Marcus Aurelius would advise that accepting the transient nature of relationships will allow you to suffer less when they end. Rule 2. Master your emotions through rational thought. It's common to believe that emotions control us. When someone we care about drifts away, we feel pain, sadness, and anger, natural reactions to emotional attachment. But the Stoics teach us a vital truth. Emotions are not reality. They are a product of our thoughts, beliefs, and interpretations of events. Marcus Aurelius emphasized that we are not at the mercy of our emotions. Our emotions are at the mercy of our thoughts. This principle holds immense power. We have the ability to govern our emotional state through the way we think. Your thoughts about someone can ignite a storm of feelings, or they can calm the very same storm. In this light, emotional detachment begins by realizing that your mind has the power to shape how you respond to the world. When you accept that you are in control of your thoughts, you empower yourself to gain strength and inner peace. By mastering our thoughts, we can choose how to respond to painful situations rather than being swept away by them. Rule 3. Focus on what you can control. In any relationship, there will be elements beyond our control. The other person's feelings, actions, and decisions are outside our influence. However, the Stoics remind us to focus on what we can control: our own reactions, thoughts, and choices. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength by focusing on how we respond, rather than on the uncontrollable actions of others. We free ourselves from unnecessary emotional turmoil. Rule 4. Practice self-awareness. To detach emotionally, it's essential to understand the root of your attachment. Reflect on why you feel so connected to someone and ask yourself if these emotions are truly serving you. Self-awareness allows you to evaluate whether a relationship is healthy or if it has become a source of emotional weight. Rule 5. Cultivate inner peace. Ultimately, emotional detachment is about finding inner peace, irrespective of the actions of others. Marcus Aurelius's life was a testament to this. Despite facing immense personal and political challenges, he maintained a sense of inner calm by focusing on his principles, values, and personal growth. By practicing Stoic principles, we too can cultivate a sense of peace that isn't dependent on external relationships. In conclusion, emotional detachment is not about shutting off our feelings, but about learning to manage them by understanding the impermanence of life, mastering our emotions through rational thought, focusing on what we can control, practicing self-awareness and cultivating inner peace. We can navigate the inevitable changes in our relationships with wisdom and resilience. Going through a breakup can feel like you're emotionally shattered. You replay conversations in your mind, overanalyzing every detail, asking questions like, "Why did this happen?" or "How could they move on so easily?" It's natural to feel lost and disoriented, but the Stoic response is to shift your focus. Instead of letting your emotions take control, ask yourself, what are the facts here? How can I think about this differently? Emotional detachment isn't about becoming numb. It's about learning how to regain your mental clarity. You must consciously choose thoughts that free you from emotional suffering rather than those that fuel it. Think about it when something happens, like an argument with a loved one, feeling ignored or being disappointed. What's the first thing you do? You interpret the situation and give it meaning. However, Stoicism teaches that it's not the event itself that causes emotional turmoil, but the way you perceive it. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, your emotions are directly shaped by your internal dialogue. Imagine this scenario. You send a heartfelt text to someone you care about, maybe a friend, romantic partner, or family member. Hours go by without a response, and your mind immediately starts working overtime. Did I say something wrong? Are they mad at me? Do they not care about me? With every passing minute, your emotions build. Concern turns to frustration, which evolves into anxiety or even anger. But what's the truth of the situation? Is it the delay in their response that's causing your emotional storm, or is it the interpretation of their silence? The Stoic approach is to challenge that automatic emotional reaction by focusing on the facts. The fact is that they haven't responded. Everything beyond that is pure speculation. Instead of allowing your emotions to spiral, you pause and recognize that your feelings of anxiety or rejection aren't grounded in reality, but are the product of your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius's advice: question your thoughts, don't just accept them as truth. I once found myself in a similar situation with a close friend. We were discussing something important, and then they suddenly stopped responding. At first, I thought nothing of it, but as hours passed, I felt a creeping unease. Maybe they're upset with me. Did I say something wrong? By the time the night ended, I had convinced myself that the friendship was on the brink of collapse. Worry, guilt, and frustration took over. However, when I stopped and examined what was actually happening, I realized something crucial. Nothing had happened. My friend had simply gotten busy. When I reached out the next day, they responded without issue, completely unaware of the emotional storm I had put myself through. That experience reminded me of Marcus Aurelius's words: focus on what's within your control, your thoughts and actions, not the outcome or the other person's feelings. By redirecting my mind, I was able to release the emotional turmoil. Rule 3: practice negative visualization. At first glance, the Stoic practice of negative visualization might seem strange or even counterproductive. Why would anyone want to deliberately imagine losing someone or something they care about? Doesn't this just add unnecessary stress? But the truth is, negative visualization, championed by Marcus Aurelius, is one of the most powerful tools for emotional detachment. It doesn't harden your heart. Instead, it prepares your mind for life's inevitable losses. The concept is simple but profound. By imagining the worst-case scenario in advance, you lessen its emotional impact when or if it actually happens. This doesn't mean becoming fatalistic or pessimistic. It means training yourself to accept reality as it is, rather than how you wish it would be. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not disturb yourself by imagining the whole of your life's troubles at once. Rather, as each arises, meet it with calmness and self-control." Negative visualization builds resilience. Imagine someone you're deeply attached to, a partner, a close friend, or a family member. Now visualize your life without them. Picture them no longer in your day-to-day life. How does that feel? Uncomfortable? Painful? That's exactly the point. The Stoics believe that by facing the emotional discomfort of loss in your mind, you reduce its power to devastate you in reality. I practiced this technique during a time when my best friend was considering moving overseas. We had been inseparable for years, and the thought of them being on the other side of the world filled me with dread. But instead of suppressing that fear, I embraced it every day. I imagined what life would be like without them, going about my routines, hanging out with other friends, and finding joy in new things. When the time came for them to move, I wasn't. Blindsided by grief or loneliness, the loss still stung, but I had already mentally rehearsed it, and that made all the difference. Another aspect of negative visualization is recognizing that loss is a natural part of life. Everything you share will one day be gone, whether through separation, change, or death. This isn't meant to be a morbid thought, but a liberating one. When you stop expecting permanence, you stop feeling entitled to it. And when you stop feeling entitled to something, the fear of losing it diminishes. Take relationships. For example, most of us enter relationships assuming they will last forever. We don't plan for things to end. But the truth is, nothing is guaranteed. Instead of clinging to the false hope of permanence, the Stoic approach is to appreciate what you have while you have it, knowing that it will eventually change. This shift in perspective can be incredibly freeing. I once had a relationship where I was constantly anxious about it. Ending, the thought of losing that person, consumed me. But when I started practicing negative visualization, I stopped obsessing over trying to control the outcome. I imagined life after the relationship, although it was painful to consider it, reminded me to be grateful for the present moment. When the relationship eventually ended, I found myself more prepared than I ever thought I'd be. The real gift of negative visualization is that it strengthens your inner resilience. By repeatedly imagining worst-case scenarios, you develop an inner stability that can't be easily shaken by life's changes. You learn that no matter what happens, you will be okay. And that's the ultimate form of emotional detachment, not from life itself, but from the illusion that you need things to stay the same in order to be happy. Rule 4. Focus on what you can control. One of the core teachings of Stoicism, and one of the most empowering realizations you can embrace, is that there are things within your control and things that are beyond it. In relationships, we cannot control how someone else feels, behaves, or responds to us. What we can control, however, are our thoughts, our actions, and our responses to what happens around us. When faced with emotional turbulence, we must focus on what we can control: our own actions and mental state. Marcus Aurelius famously said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength by focusing on your thoughts and your responses to situations. You take back control from the external world. When you find yourself caught in emotional turmoil, remind yourself that you have the power to choose how to react. You cannot control how others treat you, but you can control your own peace and actions. In conclusion, emotional detachment is not about shutting off your feelings. It's about learning to master them through understanding the impermanence of life, questioning your thoughts, practicing negative visualization, and focusing on what you can control. You can cultivate resilience and emotional strength. Life will inevitably bring challenges, but with these Stoic principles, you can navigate them with clarity and inner peace. When it comes to emotional detachment, one of the most important distinctions you can make is between what's within your control and what's outside of it. This distinction becomes especially crucial in relationships where much of our pain stems from our desire to control things we simply can't. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, repeatedly emphasizes the need to focus only on what is within our control. Our thoughts, actions, and responses. Everything else, other people's behavior, the outcomes of situations, the passing of time, is outside of our control. The more you try to control what lies beyond your influence, the more you will suffer. Emotional detachment, then, is not about coldly distancing yourself from others, but rather about letting go of your attachment to outcomes. You cannot dictate when you're deeply attached to someone, whether it's a romantic partner, a friend, or a family member. It's natural to want to influence how they feel about you. You want them to care about you in the same way you care about them. But the harsh truth is that you can't control their emotions. You can't make someone love you, appreciate you, or treat you the way you feel you deserve. The only thing you can control is how you respond to their actions. Reflect for a moment on a time when you tried to influence someone's feelings or behavior. Maybe you bent over backward to win someone's affection, or you exhausted yourself trying to prove your worth to a friend who never seemed to truly value you. How did that feel? Likely it left you feeling frustrated, anxious, and powerless because you were chasing something beyond your control. In my own experience, I was once in a relationship where I felt like I was constantly trying to keep things together, no matter how much effort I put into planning dates, sending thoughtful messages, or being emotionally available. It felt like I was always one step behind. My partner would pull away, and I would try harder. It became a cycle of endless anxiety because I was trying to control how they felt about me. Eventually, I embraced the Stoic principle of focusing only on what I could control, my own actions and my self-worth. I began to let go of the anxiety and realized I couldn't make them love me more or treat me better. All I could control was my response in that moment. I chose to detach, and the relief that came from letting go of that emotional burden was immense. One of the most liberating things you can do for yourself is to embrace emotional autonomy, the idea that your happiness, peace, and emotion stability are not dependent on someone else's behavior or feelings. When you place your emotional well-being in someone else's hands, you give away your power. You become a prisoner to their actions, moods, and decisions. Imagine you're in a friendship where you constantly feel sidelined. Your friend doesn't make time for you like they used to, and you feel neglected. Naturally, this hurts, and you might find yourself ruminating on what you did wrong or why they've pulled away. But here's the key. Their behavior is outside your control. The only thing within your power is how you choose to respond. Do you want to spend your energy chasing after someone who doesn't value you, or do you want to focus on nurturing the relationships and activities that bring you joy and fulfillment? When you shift your attention to what you can control, your own emotional state, you begin to reclaim your power. You no longer wait for someone else's validation or attention to feel whole. Instead, you create your own emotional equilibrium, independent of external circumstances. In my own life, I've had friendships where I realized I was giving too much power to how the other person treated me. If they were distant or dismissive, I'd feel unworthy. If they were warm and attentive, I'd feel valued. It was an exhausting emotional roller coaster, but when I started applying Stoic principles, I made a conscious decision to stop tying my self-worth to how others acted. I began to focus on cultivating my own emotional well-being, being independent of their behavior. This didn't mean I cared less. It meant I stopped letting their actions dictate my inner peace. The ultimate goal of emotional detachment is not indifference. It's acceptance. Acceptance that life is unpredictable, that people are unpredictable, and that no matter how much we wish we could control everything, we can't. What we can do is accept things as they are, rather than how we wish they would be. Imagine you're dealing with a breakup. You feel lost, hurt, and overwhelmed by the situation. Your mind races with questions. What if I had done something differently? Why did this happen? Can I fix this? These are natural questions, but they're rooted in a desire to control something that has already happened, a desire to reverse the outcome. Instead of tormenting yourself with what-ifs, the Stoic response is to accept the reality of the situation. Marcus Aurelius writes, "The impediment to action and advance is action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the obstacles we face are not hindrances. They are opportunities for growth. When you accept what's outside your control, you stop wasting energy trying to change the past or influence others. Instead, you start focusing on how you can move forward in one of the toughest times of my life. I experienced the sudden and painful loss of a relationship I thought was solid. At first, I was consumed by the desire to understand why it happened, and what I could have done differently. But slowly I realized the only way to find peace was to accept the situation, as it was not as I wanted it to be. I couldn't change the past, and I couldn't control how the other person felt. What I could control was how I reacted to that loss. Instead of clinging to what was gone, I embraced the present reality and found strength and acceptance. Reflect on the bigger picture. When you're deeply entangled in the emotional chaos of a relationship, whether it's a breakup, friendship, fallout, or family issues, it's easy to get caught up in the details and lose sight of the bigger picture. The pain feels overwhelming, and it's easy to think it will last forever, but Stoicism teaches us to view these challenges in the broader context of Marcus Aurelius reminds us that life is fleeting, and every hardship we face is temporary. When we zoom out and put our emotional struggles in perspective, they often feel less consuming. You are part of a much larger universe, and the pain you're feeling now is just one chapter in the story of your life. Viewing your struggles through the lens of time helps to lessen their emotional grip. For example, during a particularly challenging breakup, I found myself trapped in a cycle of ruminating over every small detail. Why didn't they love me the way I love them? Why did this happen? It wasn't until I stepped back and reflected on the larger context of my life that I found a sense of peace. I realized that this relationship was just one part of my life's journey, and while it hurt, it wasn't the end of my story. The bigger picture helped me to regain perspective and move forward with a clearer mind. Conclusion. The Stoic philosophy offers powerful tools for emotional detachment that aren't about suppressing your feelings, but about learning to navigate them with wisdom and resilience. By focusing on what you can control, accepting life's impermanence, and embracing the present moment, you can free yourself from the emotional weight of situations beyond your influence. Emotional detachment is not about becoming indifferent, but about cultivating a deeper sense of inner peace and emotional autonomy, regardless of external circumstances. In the midst of a difficult relationship or emotional situation, it's easy to lose perspective. Stoic philosophy, particularly through the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, encouraged us to step back and reflect on the bigger picture. Aurelius often emphasized that our troubles, fears and desires are mere fleeting moments in the vastness of time. By adopting this broader viewpoint, emotional detachment becomes much easier when you shift your focus from immediate emotional turmoil to a higher level of reflection. You begin to see that much of your distress is tied to temporary circumstances. Stoicism reminds us that no single person or event should hold such power over our emotional well-being. When you become overly attached to someone, it's easy to make them the center of your universe. Your happiness and self-worth can become entangled with their presence or absence in your life. However, by stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, you realize that life is always changing. Relationships, no matter how intense, are just one part of your journey. You are a complete individual with your own path and experiences, and no single event or relationship can define you. In the heat of a breakup or emotional conflict, it's difficult to grasp this perspective, but reflecting on the larger scope of your life helps you understand that you've survived emotional storms before life moved on. And so, did you think back to previous relationships or situations when you thought your world was falling apart? Those wounds healed and you grew stronger and wiser. This is the natural rhythm of life. Pain comes, but it also passes. In my own experience, I once went through a painful breakup that felt like the end of my world for weeks. I fixated on the past, feeling as though the future had lost its brightness. But with time, I allowed myself to reflect on the bigger picture. I realized that while this person was important to me, they were not the defining moment of my life. They were a chapter in my story, but not the whole narrative. By zooming out, I saw the relationship as just one part of a much larger journey, and that helped me begin to emotionally detach. The Stoics, especially Marcus Aurelius, emphasized the impermanence of all things: relationships, emotions and situations. Everything in life is transient. What truly matters is how we respond to these inevitable changes. Reflecting on the bigger picture helps you cultivate a sense of inner peace, knowing that life will continue to flow regardless of your temporary attachments. This broader perspective allows you to detach emotionally, not because you stop caring, but because you understand that clinging too tightly to fleeting things only leads to unnecessary suffering. Emotional detachment in this sense is not about apathy, it's about understanding that life is much larger than any single person, relationship, or moment of pain. By seeing your life as a vast, interconnected web of experiences, you free yourself from the tunnel vision that emotional attachment can create. Ultimately, emotional detachment is not about shutting down your emotions or closing yourself off from the world. It's about building resilience and gaining control over how you respond to life's inevitable changes. The Stoic path offers not a quick fix, but a way to find inner peace by embracing impermanence, mastering your emotions through rational thought, and reflecting on the bigger picture. You'll discover that emotional detachment is an AC of self-liberation.